Hello there, welcome to Depths of Unknown. Picture this, it's a clear Saturday morning in October. The air smells like pine and wet earth. A 34-year-old schoolteacher named Marcus laces up his boots, clips his water bottle to his pack, tells his wife he'll be back by dinner, and heads into the Ozark National Forest in northwestern Arkansas. He knows the trail. He's hiked it a dozen times. He has a map. He has a phone. He has experience. And by Sunday morning, Marcus is gone. Search teams comb the forest for 6 days. They find his water bottle, upright, sitting on a flat rock near a creek. No signs of a fall, no signs of struggle. His phone is located half a mile from the trail, battery dead, surrounded by undisturbed leaves. His boots, still tied, are found on the opposite side of the creek. Marcus himself is never found. Stories like this, and there are many, have led investigators, researchers, survivalists, and conspiracy theorists alike to focus on one hauntingly specific region, a stretch of land spanning parts of Arkansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, overlapping portions of the Ozark Plateau. Some call it the Ozark Triangle. Others call it the Vanishing Belt. Whatever you call it, the disappearances are real. The pattern is undeniable, and the explanations, as we're about to discover, are stranger and more complex than most people are willing to admit. Today, we go deep into the Ozark Triangle, into the geology, the psychology, the folklore, the cold cases, and the science. And we try to answer the question that nobody has been able to fully answer. Why do hikers vanish here? To understand why people disappear in the Ozarks, you first have to understand what the Ozarks actually are. Because the Ozarks are not like other mountain ranges. They don't behave the way terrain is supposed to behave. The Ozark Plateau is one of the oldest land masses in North America, ancient, eroded, and riddled with secrets beneath its surface. Unlike the Rockies or the Appalachians, the Ozarks aren't the result of tectonic collision or volcanic uplift. They were shaped by water, millions of years of rivers carving through dolomite and limestone, creating a landscape that looks simple from above, but is devastatingly complex from the inside. Beneath the rolling hills and dense hardwood forests lies the largest karst system in the United States. Karst topography is formed when water dissolves soluble rock like limestone over enormous spans of time, creating underground caves, sinkholes, disappearing streams, and unpredictable terrain that can literally swallow you. The Ozarks have over 7,000 documented caves. 7,000. And geologists estimate that number is just a fraction of what actually exists underground. There are passages and chambers that have never been mapped. There are sinkholes that open without warning. There are cave networks that connect valleys miles apart. But here's where it gets even stranger. The Ozarks experience something called magnetic anomalies, localized regions where the Earth's magnetic field behaves irregularly due to iron-rich geological deposits underground. Compasses in these zones can spin erratically, point force north, or simply refuse to give a consistent reading. Think about that. You're in a landscape that looks like gentle hills, but hides thousands of underground chambers. Your compass doesn't work reliably. The terrain doubles back on itself in ways that defy your memory, and the forest canopy, thick, mature, and ancient in many parts, blocks your view of the sun for extended periods. This is the Ozarks. This is where people go for weekend hikes. And this is why, despite all our modern technology, people still vanish. If you look at disappearances in the Ozark region over the past century, a pattern emerges that is genuinely difficult to explain through conventional logic alone. In many cases, victims are either never found or they are found in locations that were thoroughly searched multiple times. People vanished from areas that search teams walked through the very same day. This isn't rare. It happens again and again. In 1978, a group of 4 Boy Scouts disappeared during a weekend camping trip in the Buffalo National River area of Arkansas. 3 were found after 4 days, disoriented and unable to explain where they'd been or why they hadn't responded to searches. They later admitted hearing. The 4th boy was found 6 weeks later, 14 miles from the campsite, having lost approximately 20 pounds. He had no memory of the time he was missing. In 1994, a retired military veteran and experienced woodsman named Dale Hensley went for an afternoon walk near his property in Carroll County, Arkansas. Searchers spent 11 days combing the area. They found a button from his shirt. They found a partial boot print. Dale Hensley was never found. In 2003, a trail runner named Carla Voss vanished during a training run in the Mark Twain National Forest in southern Missouri. Her GPS watch stopped recording data midway through the run, not because the battery died, but because the data simply stops, as if she ceased moving. Rescue teams followed the GPS coordinates to the last recorded position and found nothing. She was discovered 3 weeks later, severely dehydrated, claiming she had been walking continuously, but couldn't understand why she hadn't found a road or town. What's striking across these cases, and dozens of others, is a set of recurring features. Victims are often found without shoes. They often have no memory of significant stretches of time. They are frequently found near water, creeks, rivers, springs, regardless of where they went missing. And in cases where victims are never found, the last known position often involves elevation changes or proximity to geological features. The Ozark region produces a statistically unusual concentration of vanishing cases relative to its visitor population, and nobody has a clean answer for why. Now let me be clear. I'm not here to tell you that something supernatural is taking people in the Ozarks. I am here to tell you that the science itself is extraordinary enough to explain some of what's happening, and that the explanation is far more terrifying than any ghost story. Human navigation is far more fragile than we like to believe. Studies in spatial cognition show that when humans lose visual landmarks or the ability to use celestial navigation, that is, when they can't see the sun, the stars, or the horizon, they begin to move in circles almost immediately. This phenomenon, called path integration failure, happens faster in areas of magnetic anomaly, where the subconscious magnetic sense that researchers have documented in human biology begins receiving false signals. Yes, humans have a magnetic sense. Research published in the journal eNeuro in 2019 confirmed that human brains respond to changes in magnetic fields, even when subjects are completely unaware of it. In areas of magnetic irregularity, this subconscious sense gives false directional information, compounding the navigational confusion caused by featureless terrain. Add to this the Ozarks fog. The region generates some of the densest ground fog in the continental United States, particularly in valley systems and near water. Hikers who set out in clear morning conditions can be enveloped by dense fog within hours. Combined with magnetic anomalies and karst terrain, this creates conditions where even experienced navigators become completely lost. Then there's hypothermia, and I want you to understand that hypothermia is not just a cold weather phenomenon. The Ozarks experience rapid temperature drops, particularly in spring and fall, the most popular hiking seasons. A hiker who gets wet, crossing a stream, caught in a rain shower, can experience the early stages of hypothermia at temperatures as high as 60 degrees Fahrenheit if wind is present. And here's the critical thing. Hypothermia doesn't just make you cold, it destroys your judgment. In the early stages of hypothermia, victims experience confusion, poor decision-making, and a paradoxical sensation of warmth. This is why hypothermic victims are often found without clothing, a documented phenomenon called paradoxical undressing, where the victim removes clothes because they feel overheated despite being dangerously cold. This explains the boots, the missing jackets, the inexplicable behavior of people who should know better. And then there are the sinkholes and cave entrances. The Ozarks karst landscape creates hidden voids, some small, some enormous, that can open suddenly beneath a person's feet. Cave entrances concealed by leaf litter and vegetation are nearly invisible. A hiker who falls into a cave system may be completely unhurt, but utterly unable to climb back out. In a cave, your phone loses signal. Your calls for help are absorbed by limestone walls. Search teams walking directly above you cannot hear you. You can be 6 feet underground in a region being actively searched and remain completely invisible. This happens. This is documented. This is real. The Ozarks are also a place with deep, layered human history, and the people who have lived here longest have always known that this land is dangerous in ways that are hard to articulate. The Osage Nation, who inhabited the Ozark Plateau for centuries before European contact, considered certain portions of the forest sacred and avoided them entirely. Oral traditions describe areas where the land confuses the mind, and where ancestral spirits held dominion. These weren't metaphors, they were warnings. Warnings born from generations of experience with exactly the kind of navigational confusion and mysterious disappearances that modern investigators are now cataloging. Early European settlers brought their own folklore. Ozark mountain communities developed rich traditions of caution around certain hollow systems, narrow valley cuts surrounded by steep ridges. These hollows were said to be places where sound traveled strangely, where you could call out and hear your own voice coming back from the wrong direction, where dogs refused to enter. The acoustic properties of Ozark hollows are, in fact, scientifically remarkable. The curved limestone walls of certain valley systems can create sound reflection patterns that completely disorient listeners, making them unable to determine where a sound is coming from. If you're lost and shouting for help, and the echo is returning from the wrong direction, you may move toward the echo, and directly away from the searchers responding to your calls. There's also the tradition of what Ozark communities called haints, spirits that lure travelers off established paths. The behavioral pattern attributed to haints, being drawn off a trail by what seems like a familiar voice, becoming confused, and being found miles away with no memory, maps remarkably well onto documented cases of acoustic confusion combined with early-stage hypothermia. Folklore is often the long memory of a community, the accumulated record of patterns observed over generations, translated into narrative form. When Ozark grandmothers warned children not to follow voices in the holler, they were encoding real survival information. You might be thinking, this is the modern era. We have GPS, we have satellite communicators, we have smartphones with downloaded offline maps. Why are people still vanishing? And the answer reveals something important about human nature and the particular challenges of this terrain. GPS is not infallible in the Ozarks. Dense forest canopy interferes with satellite signal acquisition. Canyon and hollow walls create shadow zones where your device cannot get a fix. And more importantly, GPS tells you where you are. It does not tell you how to navigate the terrain between you and safety. A GPS coordinate is useless if the path to that coordinate crosses an unmapped sinkhole field, a flooded cave entrance, or a cliff face that looks passable on your screen but isn't from the ground. Cell coverage in the Ozarks is genuinely bad. Large portions of the Ozark National Forest and Mark Twain National Forest have no cell service whatsoever. Hikers who rely on their phone discover this at the worst possible moment. But most importantly, people underestimate the Ozarks. This is perhaps the most dangerous factor of all. The Ozarks don't look threatening. They're not dramatic jagged peaks. They're not glaciers. They're not scorching desert. They're rolling green hills with pretty creeks. They look like a really nice weekend. People bring their kids. People go alone. People hike in trail runners instead of boots. People don't bring emergency shelter because it seems like overkill for a Saturday afternoon. The Ozarks lull people into a false sense of security, and then they reveal their true nature: ancient, complex, and completely indifferent to human survival. Over the past 15 years, the Ozark region has become one of the most studied zones by researchers cataloging unusual disappearances. David Polides, a former law enforcement officer, has documented hundreds of anomalous cases across the United States and has consistently highlighted the Ozarks as a statistically significant cluster. What makes this line of research genuinely useful, whatever you think of its conclusions, is that it treats these cases as data. It asks the questions mainstream investigation often avoids. Why was this person found with no shoes? Why does the GPS data simply stop? Why did 3 different search teams miss a victim in an area the size of a football field? Mainstream search and rescue experts have their own answers, and they're worth hearing. Experienced SAR coordinators point to something called the distance to water phenomenon. Lost people, particularly those in states of confusion or early hypothermia, consistently move toward and eventually into water sources. This explains why so many Ozark missing persons are found near creeks and rivers, or why, in cases of drowning, bodies are recovered far downstream. They also point to what they call the walking wounded problem. Hikers who sustain minor injuries that impair their judgment just enough to send them off trail, but not obviously enough to prompt an immediate turnaround. A twisted ankle, a mild concussion, a blood sugar drop. These small impairments in complex terrain become catastrophic. The honest consensus among search and rescue professionals is this: the Ozarks produce an above-average rate of difficult disappearances because they combine maximum terrain complexity with minimum perceived danger. And that is a formula for exactly the pattern we've been describing. But I want to spend a moment on the cases that don't fit any explanation, because they exist, and ignoring them would be dishonest. In 2011, a retired geology professor named Edward Marsh, a man who, of all people, understood Ozark terrain, went missing during a solo-day hike in the Buffalo River watershed. He was found 11 days later, alive, in a cave approximately 4 miles from where he was last seen. He was in good physical condition despite 11 days without apparent food. He had lost his glasses, and he was adamant, calmly, rationally, consistently adamant, that he had only been in the cave for 1 day. He passed polygraph testing. He underwent full psychological evaluation. He had 11 days of missing time that he experienced as one. His family confirmed he had no history of dissociation or psychological disorder. Edward Marsh died in 2019 without ever resolving what happened to him. In 2016, 2 hikers on the Waichita Trail in western Arkansas, a married couple, both in their 40s, both experienced, became separated when the husband went ahead to check the trail and the wife waited. He returned in under 10 minutes. She was gone. She was found the following evening, 12 miles away, sitting beside a highway, completely unharmed, with no memory of how she got there. She had no blisters consistent with 12 miles of hiking. She had no mud on her boots. These cases don't fit geological explanation. They don't fit hypothermia. They don't fit any framework we currently have. And the most intellectually honest thing I can say is this: we don't know. We don't fully know what the Ozark Triangle is. We don't fully know what it does to people who enter it. We have partial explanations. We have science that covers a significant portion of the cases, and we have a remainder, a stubborn, strange, documented remainder that currently has no explanation at all. So let me bring this home with something practical. Because if you're a hiker, if you love the Ozarks, as many people genuinely do, I'm not here to tell you never to go. The Ozarks are extraordinary. They're beautiful. They're one of the most ecologically diverse regions in North America. But go in prepared. Carry a personal locator beacon, not just a phone, because a PLB works on satellite frequencies independent of cell towers and GPS accuracy issues. Tell someone not just where you're going, but your specific planned route and a turnaround time that you commit to. Understand that a compass may not be reliable in parts of this region. Download your offline maps before you leave the trailhead. Bring emergency shelter, because in the Ozarks, weather changes fast, and hypothermia can happen at temperatures you would never expect. And take the local knowledge seriously. If a resident of a small Ozark town tells you that a particular holler is not a place to go alone, listen to that. They may not be able to explain it in scientific terms, but they know the land. Their families have known the land for generations, and the land has been teaching them, through hard lessons, exactly what it's capable of. The Ozark Triangle doesn't vanish people through malice. It vanishes people through complexity. Ancient, geological, meteorological, psychological complexity that we are only beginning to understand. It is a system so layered and so old that our modern confidence, our GPS watches and trail apps and synthetic fabrics, barely scratches its surface. Marcus, the school teacher from the beginning of this story, his family still hikes. His wife started a non-profit focused on Ozark trail safety. She says the forest didn't take Marcus. She says Marcus and the forest had an encounter that neither of them survived the same way. The forest is still there, Marcus isn't. And somewhere in that equation is a lesson that the Ozark Triangle has been teaching, quietly and patiently, for a very, very long time.